It is Friday, August 14th. I'm smiling because Friday is payday. I hope it is for you too. We have a great show here for you, the news headlines, the weather report, and today in history. This morning, we'll air my exclusive interview with the Wareham Education Association. Yesterday, I got to speak with two members. I got to speak with Brian Fitzgerald, the former president, and also Deanna. Oh my goodness, name is escaping me. Anyways, all those details will come during the coffee segment. So we'll get to air that interview this morning. But before we get to any of that, I would like to take this moment to thank Not Your Average Antiques, an antique shop down Cranberry Highway in East Wareham, for donating the props that you see in the morning show set. So stay tuned because the news headlines and the weather report are up next. Okay, Wareham Week had the following stories. A major town zoning overhaul proposal will be discussed at a public hearing set by the Wareham Planning Board. Residents will have the opportunity to present questions and concerns regarding the zoning proposal before the fall town meeting. The zoning changes targets Wareham Village, reconstructing it to attract developers. Proposed zoning changes include adjusting the rules around drive-thrus, fixing the town's sign bylaws, and clarifying the definitions of multifamily housing. The zoning changes in Wareham Village will allow taller buildings, mixed-use buildings, reduced parking requirements, and smaller lot sizes in the efforts to make the area more appealing to developers. The hearing will be on Monday at 6 p.m. in Meeting Room 320 at Multi-Service Center building. And also, the Wareham Board of Selectmen say conditions along Cranberry Highway are unacceptable. The board voted on Tuesday to send an emergency letter to Mass DOT and the Onset Fire and Water District in response to numerous complaints by residents and businesses along Cranberry Highway about the condition of the road and the construction taking place. The Mass DOT is renovating the road. Meanwhile, at the same time, Onset District is having the Mass DOT's contractors replacing the water pipes that run under the road. Some businesses have stated that the construction is blocking access to their businesses. Selectman Alan Slavin stated during the meeting that the state has agreed to cut down working days to Mondays through Thursdays. And Old Rochester Regional School District is delaying their school year by 10 days. The district has voted on a hybrid learning approach. This news comes to us through Sippican Week. Old Rochester Regional Superintendent Michael Nelson said the 10 days delay is to give teachers extra time to prepare their classrooms and acquaint staff members with the specifics and safety procedures. Today is the deadline for all schools in Massachusetts to submit their reopening proposals to the State Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And that concludes this morning news headlines. We'll be right back with our weather report.
Social distancing and staying home are the best ways to limit the spread of COVID-19. But if you must go out, make sure you cover your face. You can use anything that covers your nose and mouth, including dust masks, scarves, and bandanas. But leave the surgical masks and N95s for healthcare workers. Remember, masks slow the spread when you must go out. But staying home and social distancing are the best ways to protect yourself and others. For more information, visit mass.gov/COVID-19.
Okay, partly cloudy today with temperatures in the mid-80s. Slight chance of rain throughout the day. And actually, in the next coming days, cooler tomorrow with temperatures in the upper 70s. Partly cloudy with a slight chance of rain showers throughout the day as well. It will be, definitely will rain on Sunday and Monday with temperatures in the 80s, then back to sunny throughout the week. So enjoy your day today and tomorrow, and stay inside Sunday and Monday. You got nothing to say. Just rain. Anyways, that concludes this morning and this weekend's weather forecast. We'll be right back with more.
We want to talk to you about medical emergencies.
The kind that would result in a visit to the ED before the coronavirus hit.
The kind that would start with chest pain and sweating.
Or with difficulty speaking and drooping of the face.
Or an accident like a fall or the slip of a kitchen knife.
These are still the kind of emergencies that require a trip to your local emergency department.
Despite this pandemic.
We assure you hospitals are doing everything possible to keep emergency departments clean and safe.
And we are here to provide care to you and your family, but you must not delay.
Because when it comes to your health, time can be the difference
between life and death.
If you experience a medical emergency, call 911 or go to your local emergency department.
Hi, my name is Mike Burns, and I'm pleased to have Rich Kennedy with me today to talk about the Angel Fund. Welcome, Rich.
Thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate it.
We're glad to have you. The Angel Fund is a local organization I know, headquartered in Wakefield, Massachusetts, dedicated to raising funds for research to solve the problem of ALS. Could you tell us a little bit about the history of ALS? ALS is, of course, known as Lou Gehrig's disease as well. But,
that's correct. My history sadly begins with losing my dad back in 1989. And the understanding, at least with the neurologist from my dad, was that there was no real genetic component with ALS and that we had nothing to worry about. Well, from a family of 9, don't you know that would have been the youngest in the family, my brother Jimmy, who roughly 4 years after my dad had passed away started to notice some serious weakness and things like that. Poor Jimmy had graduated, gone to law school, graduated from law school, passed the bar, gotten married, and bought a house in suburban DC. Diagnosed when he was 28 and sadly passed away when he was 31. Well, that's enough for me to kind of draw a line in the sand and say, we've got to do something about this. It's a terribly helpless feeling to sit and watch, not just a brother, but your younger brother succumb to such a horrible disease. Thankfully, a friend of Jimmy's and a friend of mine came to me at one of their services and said, we need to do something. We thought a memorial road race would be great in his name. Well, the memorial road race turned into something enormous. It caused me to introduce myself to Dr. Robert Brown, at the time and still now the world's leading researcher in ALS. Now, Mike, I would have gone anywhere if I thought someone was the best bet to cure that disease, particularly knowing that now within my family and that I had 4 kids to protect. So I find Dr. Brown and I only have to travel to Mass General. Yet one more reason to be thankful that I grew up around Boston. I began something which we call discretionary funding, where I said to Dr. Brown, we're going to raise roughly $20,000. I'm going to hand you the check and you do whatever you want with that. This is how groundbreaking research gets done. You don't have to prove something is going to work, where you get national funding for this. This is sort of seed money, which develops novel type approaches to things. So I'm quoted in several papers before this first Memorial Road Race for my brother Jimmy talking about, if we raise $20,000, that's exactly what Dr. Brown will get. I'm not going to take any of this off the top, and we're going to hustle for all the services we can get for free. Well, that resonated with someone who saw that and brought it to his mother. This is Ginny Del Vecchio, who had started the Massachusetts chapter of a national organization and walked away when she saw how bureaucratic it had become. This kid who finds the articles says, "You've got to meet this guy, he sounds just like you." Now, sadly, after the first Jimmy Kennedy Memorial race, which didn't raise 20,000, it raised 25,000, Ginny Del Vecchio passed away. But it was after presenting the check to Dr. Brown, going to that funeral where I was introduced to her husband, her cousins, aunts, uncles, and that family, and those are the people who joined along with me, and we sort of created what was Ginny's dream, was to create an organization which would be devoted directly toward ALS research, particularly funding someone as brilliant as Dr. Brown. That's the origin of the Angel Fund. It's an organization which has done nothing but grow, and I love to refer to the extended Angel Fund family, that we are as transparent as an organization could be. To this day, I still haven't taken a dime. I have a board of directors who won't take a dime. It's the surest way to ensure that ALS research on the cutting edge is being done. $15 million is what we've raised so far, and we plan to keep on going.
I think one of the really important things, as far as I'm concerned about it, is that everybody is a volunteer. As you said, nobody, there's no salaries, very, very nominal overhead.
Right.
Which certainly makes it stand out in my mind to any number of other charities that are around. It's a terrific organization. It really
we
is.
pride ourselves particularly in that, but also to be as transparent as possible. Dr. Brown is at UMass Medical Center right now, and they're just absolutely wonderful. We love to bring our donors, we love to bring the members of this Angel Fund family in to see the labs, to see the work that's going, and to see the unbelievably dedicated people who are in there working. I said from the very beginning, I'm not smart enough to figure this out, but I'm going to outwork it, and I'll leave it to Dr. Brown and to some of these other brilliant individuals there. They can outthink it, and together that's a terrific combination.
Sure. You know, as I say, the thing that I like about the organization, it's very dynamic in that everybody's got an idea for a fundraiser.
Yep.
And some of them are a lot more successful than others, but every dollar that's raised goes to research. And you can't say that in too many other charities. It's remarkable.
Yeah, Mike, ALS has been classically underfunded. 5,000 new cases diagnosed in this country each year may seem like a lot, but compared to breast cancer and compared to some of these other diseases that have much higher numbers, drug companies typically weren't very interested in raising money for ALS because you don't make money with that few new patients coming along. So we've had to hustle. We embrace organizations like the Wilmington Rotary that are going to events. We take them all, we love them all. It's funding something which has become red hot recently with some of the new developments with things like gene silencing and drug therapy and stem cell therapy. All of a sudden now ALS has become a much more hot topic. Brilliant people are forever coming now, and now that they're studying ALS, it's nothing but good things in the future. So many of these organizations that you talk about putting together these fundraisers, they all deserve credit to getting us from point A to point B, that here we are right now in a different world where more people are interested, companies are interested, et cetera. It's going to lead to some tremendous things.
You know, one of the things I think that's such a positive is the amount of awareness that's been driven as far as ALS is concerned. Certainly Pete Frates was very instrumental in that, and the Ice Bucket Challenge and any other things. My uncle passed away from ALS 35 years ago, and it was virtually unknown. It was unheard of. Nobody knew about it. You never heard of anybody else that suffered. It was Lou Gehrig's disease, named after the Yankee first baseman. And I suppose it still is, but ALS just has a resonance now. People talk about it. I have a hat from the Angel Fund that says ALS, and you'd be surprised how many people in the course of a week or so would come up and say, oh yeah, ALS, you know, my uncle had that, or my brother's cousin had this, and so forth and so on. So it's becoming so much more widely known.
Right. You'd be hard-pressed to find someone who didn't know someone who had it. it's become, because of the Ice Bucket Challenge, that lightning in a bottle that they captured, it's become much more widely known.
Certainly.
But, you know, as a therapist, I would put up a sign for an Angel Fund event and they say, oh, my neighbor passed away from that.
Sure.
What's so encouraging now is that what my dad was given with the diagnosis of ALS was a death sentence. What my brother Jimmy was given was in fact a death sentence. Too many of the patients that I've treated as a therapist were given that same death sentence. That's what ALS was. One pet peeve was that people would say to me, Lou Gehrig passed away in 1939, and people are still dying at the same rate that they were then. And until 3 years ago, I would say, well, you don't understand how much more we know about the disease now. Well, we're at a turning point right now where we're actually getting drugs developed. We're actually getting specific therapies for ALS. So we can say now that mark 2019 and 2020 as that turning point where all of a sudden now we're going from academia to practical application from that. Lots of things have worked in the lab, but when we get them to people, those kind of fizzle out. So this is the best by far we've ever been looking at positive therapies for ALS, something which at one time was a death sentence.
Sure. Would you like to talk about your experiences with this therapy?
Oh, absolutely. I was diagnosed, unfortunately, a little over 3 years ago. And I am who I am. I've never been anything but incredibly optimistic. I call that realistic optimism because I've seen what's gone on with this. Something called gene silencing was introduced to me roughly 7 or 8 years ago. And to hear the description of manipulating someone's DNA seemed totally like science fiction to me. Well, by the time I was diagnosed, I knew how close we were to the actual practical application of that and actually starting a human trial in that. I'm fortunate in that I am that first human trial. Had to break down a lot of barriers and be very patient and wait, but back in August, I began what's called a pilot study. So far, the good news is that I'm tolerating it extremely well. It appears to be hitting the right targets. We won't know for a long time whether or not this will actually have a positive effect in slowing or hopefully arresting the disease, but it's that first step. It's no longer theoretical, it's actually taking place now. I am patient 1, and hopefully this is going to open the door for 5, 10, 15, 20, that many more people, ALS patients, not having that same death sentence. Now there is just open that door a crack, and we want desperately to kick it down.
Certainly, and again, as funding for research, that's the key.
It takes money, and these studies are prohibitively expensive. It's just simply the way that it has to be. So we'll continue to hustle. I talk about raising $15 million. In the grand scheme of things, $15 million, it goes a long way, but it doesn't get us all the way there. It's great now that things like the Ice Bucket Challenge, as you mentioned, attracts that many more people to it. We've got far more med students who are now interested in studying neurodegenerative diseases like ALS because it's so promising. It's not that death sentence that it once was. As I say, we all just want that glimmer of hope. That's what I've been hanging on to, and to actually see it now, it's quite surreal to be going through all of this. I like to say this is all too good a story not to have a happy ending.
Sure, absolutely, yes. Yeah, it's, if anybody would like to be involved with the organization or learn more, how do they go about that, Rick?
Well, the organization is called the Angel Fund. We have an online presence at theangelfund.org. That gives you a calendar of our different events, tells you a little bit about our history, and most importantly, gives you that information about what's going on, why you should be optimistic, why you should feel like me that things are very much not moving in the right direction, but now we're flying in the right direction.
With the end in sight, but we're not there yet.
Not quite.
Yeah.
And If it works for me, the next step is to get it into those who are not genetically connected, what we call sporadic ALS, which is in fact about 90% of all ALS patients.
Right.
I like to think that I'm the first domino to fall, but there's a lot more which need to fall. And that's going to take an awful lot more money.
Sure, sure. So anybody that wants to be involved or has an idea or a suggestion or whatever, it's theangelfund.org. And a number of social services, social media as well. I know a number of the people that are involved are posting on social media.
That's right.
It's just a terrific organization. I've worked with them for a few years now, and the satisfaction is tremendous. And particularly when you meet somebody like Rich Kennedy, who is so bloody optimistic about the thing. He's a great person to know. And the fact that the monies that have been raised in research are helping him is just so satisfying. So if you'd like to become involved again, it's theangelfund.org, and we hope you'll take a look at it and give it a consideration. Rich, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. Good luck, good health. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the time.
Where genius meets possibility. You think you look smart? Well, imagine if your clothes really were smart. It's simple. All you got to do is take this, turn it into that, and weave it into this. Fibers that begin with fat plastic rods could one day heat, cool, compute, and monitor our health.
There's a whole host of pretty amazing applications that could emerge if we figure out how to embed fibers with function.
With help from the National Science Foundation, a team at MIT embeds semiconductors, insulators, and metal in a polymer.
We make these shapes on a very large length scale and then draw them down into a fiber.
The embedded materials stretch along with the polymer fiber. The team is working on fibers that can see, hear, and emit light and sound. Talk about fashion forward. I'm Miles O'Brien.
I'm not like the busy type. I don't go out a lot.
Yeah.
I like to stay home and be outside.
Meet Nathan Tobin, a YouTuber.
Hey guys, it's me Nathan. Today I'm going to be showing you how to use the P38 can opener. Today I'm going to be doing a review on this tea light candle stove. Today I'm going to be showing you my EDC. This is my army belt that I made from things I found from different stores. Today I'm going to be showing you a credit card molder tool.
WCTV visited Nathan at his home in Rochester and went behind the scenes.
Today I'm going to be showing you how to use a striker. This is a striker that has a whistle on it on the back. It has a compass, and it's just your standard striker.
So where would you take this knowledge? Where would you use this knowledge?
Say you're in the woods and you have a bug out bag and you have one of these in there instead of matches, and you have some cotton balls or lint, you can use this to start a fire.
So you have taught people so far how to use a striker to make a fire.
Yep.
What other topics have you covered?
I've taught people how to use a P38 can opener.
Yeah, that was cool.
It's what the military uses to open cans.
Nice.
I've taught people how to use a little folding stove that you can bring backpacking or camping.
Mm-hmm.
I've showed people my EDC.
What is EDC?
Your everyday carry.
So you will probably be the best person to survive with.
Probably.
At age 5, Nathan was drawn to nature survival tutorials on YouTube, a passion that went along with his love for the outdoors. He started his YouTube channel about a month ago, and already he has more than 100 subscribers. So for those who have been watching and learning along with you, what do you want to say to them?
Thank you for the support they've given me. And everything. They've encouraged me to keep on going.
Yeah. So before you plan your next camping trip, maybe you would like to stop by at Nate T on YouTube to learn some simple tricks that would make your experience more comfortable.
And there you have your fire. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Bye now.
And thank you for watching. Not yet. Do not go. Welcome back. You're watching Good Morning Wareham, your source for local news, weather, and more information. And now for a moment in history. Let's take a look at where we were today in history. This day in 1961, Berlin is divided. East German soldiers used barbed wire and bricks to create a barrier, later to be known as the Berlin Wall, a symbol of Cold War repression. The wall divided the Soviet-controlled East Berlin from the democratic western part of the city. The wall is said to have been built right after midnight. Next morning, Berlin residents woke up to see that they were suddenly cut off from their loved ones and friends. It would have broke my heart if my loved one was on the other side. Oh, my lover, per se, Bob, right? Bob is shaking his head. On this day in history, in 1981, President Ronald Reagan signs Economic Recovery Tax Act. The cuts were designed to put maximum emphasis on encouraging innovation and entrepreneurship and creating incentives for the development of venture capital and greater investment in human capital through training and education. And for today's birthday, shout out goes to Fidel Castro. The leader of the communist state of Cuba was born today in 1926. And happy birthday to everyone else celebrating their big day today. That is all we have for today in history. To learn more cool historical facts, you can go online under history.com. Stay with us because the coffee segment is up next.
You've always protected me.
Whoa. And I still need you. Prescription pain pills, heroin, kids are getting addicted.
Can you still protect me?
Kids who talk with their parents about opioids are less likely to misuse them. Find out what you can say.
You can never please Bob White. Never. Anyways, now for a coffee segment, my interview with the Wareham Education Association regarding what the next month is going to look like. How are schools in Wareham going to open versus how they should open? Listen. Hello and welcome. With me in the studio are two members of Wareham Education Association. We are joined by Deanna Simple, who is the president, and Brian Fitzgerald, who is the chair of Professional Rights and Responsibilities. We are discussing a proper way forward, what school in Wareham is going to look like coming next month. Stay with us because more information coming your way. Would love to know what your mission is and if that mission has changed given COVID-19 pandemic.
Our mission is always to, as far as safety and health and safety, that's always been part of our mission, to keep staff safe, buildings up to code and working air conditioners and you know, removing asbestos, fixing leaky roofs, just some of the things that we've had to deal with since I've been around. So in that respect, it's similar to right now, except the focus is more intense on everybody's safety. And that's what we're really advocating for, because we know when we all get into a building, crammed into one space, our buildings are older than some other in the Commonwealth, and so we need to just be very careful that the air quality is safe for everybody, and so that's been a lot of the work that's been going on behind the scenes lately.
Mm-hmm. Brian, I met you outside the multi-service center building last week before the school committee was convening to discuss how to move forward, what reopening plan they were going to vote on. Could you tell us about what the association, some of the specifics of what you are requesting?
Well, what the association is requesting when we look at reopening is to use the standards that were developed long before this became political. Harvard University put out the number of 10 cases for every 100,000 population as a benchmark. The American Federation of Teachers put out a rate of transmission of below 1.0 as a benchmark. DESE has their own benchmarks they use for themselves, whether to reopen their offices. So we're advocating for that. When it became apparent to the governor that he wasn't getting what he wanted, he suddenly charted out this new map and invented these new metrics and these new numbers that would give him permission to do what he wanted to do. Kind of like a toddler who's losing a game, so they want to change the rules so they can win. We have been advocating from the very beginning for the same measures to determine when it is healthy and safe for all of us to be back in the buildings for quite some time now. And I know that, as I said, there are some people who are trying to change those because the medical science isn't telling them what they want to hear, so they want to ask different questions until they get to what they want to hear.
Now the state has released a map in the last 2 days that shows you which districts, which towns and cities are either in high risk or low risk. Our town, Wareham, is colored white. If we were to reopen using that map, then we should manage a hybrid or close to an all in-person reopening approach. When you saw that map, what did you think?
I was confused because that very day or the day before, he scaled back the phase to limit gatherings and then enforce wearing a face mask when you're gathering at your own house with more than 10 people. So at first I was really confused because he's out of one side of his mouth, he's saying, oh, we need to get more strict again and kind of back down to our phase 2 as far as gatherings, but then let's open all the schools. I don't know of any school that's going to have less than 10 people in it, so I was confused and concerned because it's giving a false message. I think it's giving a false sense of security.
So we have heard so much about what the parents are urging, what they feel it's going to be better for them and for their children. I would love to hear what teachers are feeling and saying.
We did a poll, and most of our staff, most of our members, which are not all just teachers, but you know, like I said, paras and other staff, they wanted to continue remotely, so as to be not in the buildings, to be safer. You know, there are some teachers who may have a different opinion, but when we polled, the majority did want to stay home. Many of our staff are, you know, in the high-risk category, or they're caring for somebody in the high-risk category. And to be honest with you, I will say, about a month ago, before we did the poll, I was one who wanted to go back. I mean, we all want to go back. Let's face it, we all want to be in our buildings. We want to go back to February, before March. And so, but I thought, well, I think, you know, I'm healthy, and I think it's doable. You know, we'll make precautions and this and that. But when I polled the staff and I understood more of their concerns, heard their stories, I had to understand that I was representing more than just myself. And these were real fears, and people were really scared. So it changed my idea of, you know, I'm always going to do what the majority of the people want to do that I'm representing, but it really just changed my mind. I hadn't quite thought about it like that.
The school committee did vote to start with a remote approach and then walk its way towards a hybrid approach. Do we concur with that, or we have objections?
I think we concur with that, as long as it's done in a safe manner according to the metrics that, you know, like Brian said, science has backed up that it's safe. We are looking for making sure that the HVAC systems are in good working order and that the air circulation is safe. We have rooms, because our buildings are older and we've outgrown some of our buildings. We have rooms that have no windows because maybe they weren't meant to be a classroom, but now they are. We have talked about the Harvard, you know, benchmark for the community, and so those are the things that, if those pass, then yes, we would absolutely get behind a hybrid start, but we need to make sure and have proof of those things.
What numbers are you looking for, Brian, in order to relax you, in order to feel like, okay, now we can move towards an in-person approach?
With students?
Yes.
Well, the numbers that we're looking at are 10 cases per 100,000, and I believe that's a weekly number. And when we say that, given that we're on the border between two counties, essentially, it is possible to obtain data by each county. So that would be 10 cases per 100,000 in Barnstable County and in Plymouth County. And I will say I'm not entirely sure how those are counted. I see Wareham as even more high risk than a lot of other towns because we have a hospital. We have students whose guardians work in a hospital. And I don't know if somebody from Pembroke is diagnosed with COVID at Toby. I don't know if that counts as a Pembroke or a Wareham case. But in this, it's really a Wareham case. We are looking at the rate of transmission being under 1.0, which means that the virus is, that on a consistent basis, the virus is affecting fewer people. I've never found a source that measures that by county or by town. And even by state, it's a little, they seem to have a hard time measuring it because it seems to change a lot. But right now it is under 1.0 in Massachusetts. We're looking to see that the DESE offices in Malden are open to the public. I find it galling that we have some bureaucrats announcing that they need to be safe from home, but it's okay to send children in to get sick. And then finally, as Deanna alluded to, all those questions about are the people safe, that's one dimension. The other dimension is are the buildings safe? Our buildings use recirculated air, which means that you're breathing the air not just in your room, but in other rooms on the same system. And we've all become reluctant experts on ventilation, science, and technology, and what type of filter will actually protect people. And that making the building safe in terms of the systems and in terms of providing personal protective equipment, those are the last metrics we're looking at. It is a point of discussion right now that even if you have a ventilation system that works excellently, but is not built to contain viruses, then that ventilation system is inadequate for what we're facing right now. I compare it to saying that just because a system is good enough to go scuba diving with doesn't mean that you should give it to an astronaut. Just because we have a system that's good enough that some kids will get the flu but we'll be okay, that isn't good enough in the age of COVID-19.
Are you not impressed by the recent numbers that were displayed on that map, or you just don't believe in those numbers?
The numbers themselves, I do trust that those are the actual numbers. Where I disagree with the latest change in the governor's political stance is that I disagree that those numbers are the only way to know if something is safe. The governor has found numbers that make him comfortable to say we can reopen schools, I'm doing a great job, vote for me when I run for re-election. But the fact that he only found those numbers and decided they're important now does make me question his motivation for deciding this is the magic bullet, not what Harvard has shown, not what other states are using. These metrics that make me look good are the ones that should matter. That does make me question his motivations for suddenly churning out that map.
Now, part of that pressure, the pressure of returning back to quote-unquote February before March, has to do with parents are worried. If kids are at home, it means they either have to find some type of childcare, and most parents cannot afford 24/7 childcare, or they have to stay home, and that is forgoing their work. Working from home and taking care of a young child, I am not a parent, but I could assume the two things do not coincide. They do not go well together, right? So could you talk about that? I know you are a parent. Are you a parent as well?
My children are in their 20s.
They're 12. But could you talk about that challenge that the parents are presenting and how you tend to reconcile given what you just mentioned?
You're right, it is a real challenge. It is a challenge if you're working at home with a child, and my wife teaches in the Wareham Public Schools as well. And yes, it was a challenge. And at one point my daughter said, "Can you stop being a teacher and play with me?" She's 4. And that is a challenge, and it's a challenge that I think that we're all facing together. I know there are some people who are trying to divide and turn educators and families against each other because we're in this system, unlike in so many other places that don't have as much money as we do, as a culture, as a nation. We're in this system where it's very easy to turn people against each other because there isn't provision of childcare. There isn't the availability that needs to be. But I will say, as a parent, my number one concern is always going to be my child's safety. And she's at the age where she's learning, and if she were socializing more in daycare, if she were receiving more lessons at daycare, she would be learning faster. But that means nothing if the price of that is, as I've described it, the price of that is a heart condition for the rest of her life. If it is a compromised immune system for the rest of her life, if it is wondering if she carried the virus to somebody who suffered or who died from it. That's not even talking about death. And those are the costs that COVID's exacting. And compared to that, whether it's my own daughter or my own students, what we're doing on the side of learning is nowhere near as urgent as that. Personally, any argument that starts, well, sure, a kid might die, but there's no argument that's rational. If your argument is, yeah, a couple kids might die, as we've seen some people argue, memorably in New Hampshire, there was a school committee meeting. As soon as you say, yes, some kids might die, but then I'm not even inhabiting the same moral universe as you, and I'm not really sure how to respond to that.
Now, some would argue, Brian, that because you're an educator, your kids are at an advantage, or they have an advantage over other kids who either their parents are not educators or did not have a higher education or do not have means to acquire tutors and so forth to reinforce the education that they're getting through remote learning. What do you say?
There is going to be an educational repercussion if students are learning from outside the building than inside the building. Now, part of the misconceptions are that if students are inside the building, education is not going to look anything like it did in February. It's not going to be anywhere near as effective as it was in February. So that gap isn't as large. But there is definitely the understanding that there will be an adverse effect on children's education. And this might be a case where people have different priorities, because I will accept that, and I'm already mentally planning for the next 4 or 5 years as a 5th grade teacher. I'm going to have to work harder, and I'm going to do things differently. I'm going to have to do things better to help students catch up from what they have missed. But I just have to come back to, is it worth doing that if someone's going to be alive who would otherwise be dead? Yes. Yes, it will. And perhaps people disagree, but is it worth saving kids' lives at the cost of 3 or 4 months of 3 or 4 months where there's a gap between what they're learning at home and what they'll be learning in the classroom, fixed to their desks because of CDC regulations and social distancing guidelines? Yes, that is going to be the cost of keeping these kids alive.
What plan do we have for children with special needs and those who really need face-to-face teachers' intervention?
What plan does the district have?
Yes. Or what plan have you proposed in all this?
I'm not sure if the district has a specific plan for that. We contend that we still need to teach remotely, even those students, if the buildings aren't safe to come in. And we recognize that they have more of a need, but I just received an email of concern today because she's been in touch with families of her students that she has in her class, and they some are planning on they don't want to come in, they'll be remote, but then some of her students that would like, families that would like hybrid, 2 of those students will not be wearing a mask because of their disability, and that's a real thing. That's going to be a problem. So we contend that if the building isn't safe for a certain population, it's not safe for the whole population.
When we're talking about making the building safe, where are we with that? Does the district have the budget to make the renovations required? Or we're all just going to wait until we have 0 for a number in order to return?
Well, I don't think the building's ever going to be completely safe. I teach in a hallway that floods that's flooded twice over the past year and a half. Where are we in terms of primarily the ventilation systems? That's a question that I don't feel comfortable answering. I know that the district has a vendor who is cleaning the systems. I don't know if that vendor is evaluating them. I know it is a vendor that traditionally that has before worked with the systems. I don't know, Queen, if the systems are up to keeping students and staff safe. They're still looking through them, and to my knowledge, Deanna, please tell me if I'm wrong, we haven't received any of the information we've asked about that.
No, we did request documents, and it sounds like they're in the process of getting them together, but we haven't been shown anything yet.
Because what you're requesting, it sounds like a rational thing, but given our town and the budget that we are facing, You know, that's it before even the COVID-19 crisis. And now, looking at it now, I feel like you may sound like you're asking for too much. And if that is the case, what does it mean when we're talking about a hybrid approach if we cannot meet those guidelines?
What we're asking for, in my very civilian understanding of ventilation system engineering, what we're asking for is a system that filters out the virus and doesn't transmit it between locations. And the ability to modify, if that's even necessary, varies greatly based on how old the systems are and what their capacity is. So I'm not even, when you ask it, I don't mean to paraphrase your words inaccurately. When you ask, can Wareham afford it? Well, we don't know how much it's going to be. And then if it does come that the district does produce the results of this, we can look at what the cost is going to be. And then that would be a decision that I think as a community that needs to be made is, can we afford what it takes to keep the building safe?
Mm-hmm. So what is next? Because school is due to open in a month. Where are we at the moment? What kinks do we still need to untangle?
Well, first of all, we're ahead of a lot of other districts. That, and I say that vote was an essential moment to this, because now we have hundreds of educators who can stop being in stasis and can start mentally planning, what is it going to look like when I'm teaching remotely? One of the greatest misconceptions is remote teaching is what happened last spring. Last spring was crisis teaching. It was March 13th, we're all but evacuated. If the kids are still there, throw them the Chromebook. If they're not there, we'll get them the Chromebook later. But now that the school committee made this decision a month before we're going to see students, all of us are already planning, okay, what's it going to look like? And some of our colleagues are light years ahead of others in terms of saying, this is what my online portal is going to look like, and they're all set to go. So we are far ahead of a lot of other districts by being able to do that. In terms of where there is to go, there is still a lot further to go, and you can see members of the community asking questions in terms of this first phase when students are not in the buildings. Is it going to be live teaching? Is it going to be recorded? Is it going to be both? What hours is it? You know, I think of a family with 5 students of different ages. You can't have them all online at the same time. So there are an incredible amount of kinks to work through that we're trying to work with the administration through as people who know what it looks like on the ground when you actually implement it. But the biggest, most important first step has already been taken. And part of the difficulty that I will say that I think it's fair to say the association has is when we have the governor and commissioner of education trying to meddle and say, well, wait a minute, they're not happy that districts aren't doing what they wanted. And I do have a fear that they are going to try to scramble everything because of their personal agendas and keep us from continuing to plan. Because what we need to do now is we need to plan so that it doesn't look like this spring, that it is not crisis teaching, that we can take the elements that are most important to us as educators and find the way to implement them with faithfulness into an online, into a remote environment. And that is possible. We just need the time that we did not have in spring to do that.
I would like to extend the privilege of asking you guys if there's something that you'd like to add that I didn't ask.
One thing that I think that is important to note in this discussion that's touched on earlier, I think there's still a misconception that if students are back in the buildings, it'll be like the good old days back in February. Whereas we know that there will be an expectation, students wearing a mask at their seats, you're not working with partners, you're not working with groups, you're not walking around. You're not, even given how small our classrooms are, you're not even going to be in the front of the class doing something, you're not going to be interacting the way that things are. We've seen a lot of surveys from the association of the district, and talking to people who completed it, it seems that there's still a misconception out there that hybrid learning is going to look like learning as it was in February. And it is not. It is going to be very different, it is not going to be anywhere near as effective. So I think one thing that I hope that people understand is there seems to be this misconception that your choices are remote learning that we saw this spring, that was a challenge for everybody. Or it's going to be like it was in February, much more effective, much more enjoyable. When the reality is, now that we know what we're doing, the remote learning is going to be a lot better. And because of the health concerns, the experience in a hybrid classroom is not going to be nearly as effective. So the gap isn't enormous. The gap is very small. And the decision I think that we're all facing with, and we're all applying our own calculus to, is this gap big enough to justify putting children at risk? And the association is saying no. And we saw that the Wareham Public Schools joined us with that in the statement we jointly released. They joined us in that in the vote for how they're going to return to school. And we just hope that we can remain in agreement that this gap is not worth risking the life of a student or a staff member over.
Okay. Thank you to you both.
Thank you.
And I hope the more you know, you can come back and you can share more details with me, with us. To our viewers, thank you for listening. My guests in the studio are the members of Wareham Education Association. We have Deanna Semple, who is the president, and we have Brian Fitzgerald, who is the chair of Professional Rights and Responsibilities. We were discussing a way forward, what the next month is going to look like here in Wareham in regards to school reopening. With that, I thank you all for joining us. If you have any questions, concerns, please reach out to them directly. They have more answers than I could offer you. So with that, I wish you all a wonderful day. Bye. And thank you very much for joining us this morning for another Good Morning Wareham program. If you missed us this morning, this episode will air this evening at 6 p.m. It will also go on our YouTube channel at Wareham Community Television on YouTube. Before you go, though, I would like to remind you that there is a public hearing regarding zoning bylaw change. Sorry, not bylaw, zoning proposal. And so there will be a hearing on Monday at 6 p.m. in meeting room 320, located at Multi-Service Center Building, where you'll get the opportunity to present your questions, learn more, or present your ideas regarding zoning changes that are targeting Wareham Village. The meeting is going to be hosted by the Wareham Planning Board, and these changes are in hopes that they are going to make the area more attractive to developers. And they also talk about making the area, adding multi-family housing, fixing the town's sign bylaws, and also looking at the rules around drive-thrus. So all that great information, please do not miss that. Again, that is on Monday at 6 p.m. in meeting room 320, located at Multi-Service Center Building. And to that, I wish you all a wonderful day, Wareham. I'll see you on Monday. Have a lovely week. Bye.